Welcome back to the Composing Made Simple podcast. On today's episode, we're going to discuss what we've been listening to and how that affects our writing. Also, we're going to go into our opinions on using phrase libraries, their strengths and their weaknesses. Also, we're going to give some recommendations on some plugins that we've been using and also one sample library from Cinesamples. So I hope you tune into this episode and I hope you enjoy it. So let's get on into it.
Composing made simple. We talk about something new every show. Composing made simple. Grab a coffee, have a seat, and let's go.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Composing Made Simple podcast. Back here we have myself, Chris, and we also have Curtis and Todd, and we're really excited today because we're going to be talking about something completely music related, and that is all about influences. So kind of like, you know, what things have we listened to recently, or maybe even over the past few years that have influenced our styles in our music writing and for our production skills and just everything in general. As we always speak about how important listening to different genres of music are, and it's no exception when it comes to our own style of writing. So I wanted to talk about this today because I think it's just so important to be exposed to whatever we can listen to, and we learn so much about various different styles. Like for me personally, I've always kind of listened to the classical orchestral kind of music, also with video games and things like that. But recently I've been diving a little bit more into the jazz world a little bit. So I've listened to some big band stuff. That's kind of the area I'm trying to dive into a little bit and understand the nuances behind. So I'm going to go a little more into that a little bit later, but I wanted to call upon the other guys a little bit first. So Curtis, what have you been listening to that's kind of been influencing your work and pushing you in possibly new directions?
I've been listening to I've actually spent a long time recently. I did like a big listen to the entire album multiple times for the Anthem score for the new Anthem game. It's got some really, really cool, interesting ideas in it. I think the composer is I'm sorry, I hope I don't mispronounce her name because I've never actually heard it said. I've only read it. Her name is Sarah. It looks like Schachner or Schachner. Okay. She's a pretty big AAA game composer. She's done a bunch of stuff. But I've mostly been listening to her score for Anthem recently, and it is just breathtakingly original and interesting. The sort of one of the big things that ties it all together is that she uses a vocoder, I believe, what she's using.
Yeah.
With all this processing on it, so she vocorders like in a vocal track. I think it's just herself actually, because I saw her perform it at like a Game Awards ceremony or something, and she was actually running the vocoder at the I think it's a vocoder, and someone can correct me, I'm sure, and send me an email about how wrong I am about what she's actually using there, and that's totally fine because I could be, but anyway, it gives us this really interesting, unique sound, and it really ties into the game. And I really have been pretty hooked on that recently. Been listening to a lot of the old Halo scores by Marty O'Donnell recently. Nice. Been listening to, other than that, I've just been kind of working. Honestly, I know that's not a lot to say that I've been listening to, but between that and maybe the one-off listen to a Bruckner symphony here and there while doing the dishes, that's about what I've been listening to. So that's been really sort of interesting and fun to take a deep dive into. So sort of that I'm always trying to get better at that like sound design idea, because I feel like that's something that I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I'm not very good at it. It's not really my strength, and so I'm always trying to sort of shore up my chops there by listening to other people. So
right, just use Omnisphere, man. Come on.
Yeah, there's that.
One button.
There's so many options. For sure.
That's true.
How about you, Todd? What's been going on?
Yeah, so funny you should mention jazz. I've been diving into jazz myself and big band. Actually purchased Glenn Miller's greatest hits on iTunes, some John Coltrane, and I've been listening to some Neil Young. But the one that really surprised me and that just really grabbed me was Tom Waits. I don't know if you guys have ever listened to Tom Waits. I've never listened to him in my life. His first album, Closing Time, just the first time I heard it, blew me away. like I was just like, wow, why have I not listened to this? So if you've never heard of Tom Waits, if you could just go get his first album. It's called Closing Time. Very piano heavy, so Chris, you'd probably really love it. It's kind of jazzy, but just like the lyrics, and it's just so good, and like it just blew me away. And like I started buying more of his albums. I just don't think for me it's like his first album just captured me. There's just something about it. Like I like his other works too, but there's just something about that first album. But yeah, I've been listening to. I've been kind of going back to like like the '60s and '70s, like rock music when there was that big explosion of just these bands that just came out and like music just changed. I don't think we're ever going to hit a period like that I don't think we ever will, as far as rock music is concerned, because, all those bands were experimenting, and it just, I was just thinking about it one day. I was like thinking about how it must have felt, in like the mid 60s when you heard that music. Cause like us, we've kind of grew up with this stuff. So we just kind of take it for granted, cause it's just always been there. But can you imagine, just like one day, you're listening to like Elvis, and you're like because the Beatles were huge, but just like that kind of music, the Beach Boys, and that folky stuff, and then all of a sudden Jimi Hendrix just comes on the radio, and it's like, what? But I mean, because you got to think about it, America back then was like, jazz was huge, big band and jazz, and that was kind of like what people listened to, and then rock kind of took over in the 50s and stuff. So that's been kind of what I've been listening to, kind of all over the place, I'm just trying to branch out and just listen to stuff that I might not normally listen to. I was listening to a lot of Paul McCartney, like his solo work, a lot of Neil Young, kind of that folky stuff. It just, for some reason, that folk stuff just talks to me. I don't know what it is. Because I love Bob Dylan, but I think right now the biggest one I could say is definitely Tom Waits' Closing Time. If you've never listened to it, just go on Spotify, just give it a thing. The first song, Old 55. A beautiful song. I love it. So anyway, so that's kind of been what I've been doing. Listening.
Sorry, what's the album called? Tom Waits.
Closing Time.
Closing Time. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, it's just very, very like he plays piano, so it's very piano centric. But it's got very jazz stuff. Like kind of that, upright bass kind of thing going on, and kind of got some saxophones, and it just. My kind of thing. I just love it, and listen to a lot of Tom Petty too. You can never go wrong with Tom Petty.
Cool.
Yeah, so I just kind of been all over the place. I just kind of went on iTunes and looked up like essential rock albums. I own most of them already, but there's some in there I never considered. Like I picked up Norah Jones, like I think her first album, and Joni Mitchell, which I've never listened to these people before in my life, and it's just so cool.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. And for me personally, I've been kind of been getting into the world of Sammy Nestico, who's kind of like one of the really innovative and original big band arrangers. And he did a lot of work with Count Basie, who's a piano player. So they have an album called, or Count Basie has an album called Count Basie Straight Ahead. And so that one has just a really good collection of refreshing jazz and big band arrangements. And I've recently come across the U.S. like Army big band thing. They actually have their own YouTube channel, which is really cool. And kind of been watching some of their videos and learning a lot. But I've really got a chance to apply this because of an arrangement I've been doing for a client. And the way I found this was I've worked with this guy on a few other songs. I've done some arrangements for him, and he's hired singers to go on top of it. But on his Facebook page, he actually posted a video of like around 3 minutes of just him at his piano playing a really, really nice jazzy piano ballad that he improvised. And so I reached out to him. I'm like, yeah, let me know if you want to orchestrate this, and I'll be happy to do it. And he said yes. And so I asked him what kind of instrumentation he was going for. And he's like, yeah, kind of like jazzy, but kind of let your own spin go on it. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. So I literally spent about 10 to 15 hours just trying to figure out how I wanted to approach it, because the song had so many kind of little different sections to it, and I didn't want to, I still wanted to make it sound cohesive, but I was able to pull some of these influences I was listening to, and it starts off as kind of a nice like orchestral thing, but then in the middle it kind of comes away and just turns into almost like a small jazz ensemble type of thing. And I've really gotten to use my swing libraries and Glory Days a little bit for that. So
Nice.
it's been a fun journey, but I'm hoping it like this is kind of like a first step, so I can keep learning about that. But I would say like Sami Nesuko is kind of like the big name that I've been listening to recently, and Todd mentioned, probably should listen to Glenn Miller a little bit, and just see some of these other ones that are really known for what they're.
If you want to know how to write melodies, listen to Glenn Miller. Oh my God! Like,
sure.
I would like his one, this famous tune. What is it? In the Mood. I just listen to that, and it's like it's pretty much a loop to the whole thing, but that melody, and I think there's a lot to be learned from studying big band music, because it's it's very, it's just the horns, right? And stuff like that with the drums and stuff. So it's like if you really want to learn how to write melodies and sections and play off of each other, definitely. If you're not into the music, I think you could translate a lot of that music into film scores and just orchestral pieces, just the melody stuff alone. And I was thinking, like, for myself, I was like, man, I need to really study this too, because like if I ever want to do instrumental tracks, that's how it's done right there. It doesn't matter the instrumentation. It's just like that's the template. So yeah, I totally agree with you on that. I have a Count Basie. I picked up a Count Basie. I think it's just like his best of or whatever, or finest hour or whatever. Because like I've been going down that road too, and like I think it was from listening to Tom Waits, because like that upright bass. I actually bought a sample library for upright bass. I can't think of the name right now. It was a pretty cheap one, and I haven't used it yet, but I'm just trying to think of how to use it, incorporate it into something. So, but yeah.
How does it sound to you? Like, is it like, have you had a chance to try it out?
I was messing with it. It sounds pretty good. Like, the articulations and kind of the transitions work really well, especially like for walking bass lines. I think it's Red Room. Is it Red Room Audio? I can't remember.
I don't think Red Room Audio has a separate upright bass library. Probably. Not sure actually, but there
it seems like picked bass would be pretty. From a sampling perspective, I don't want to say easy to sample, but like made for sampling, just in terms of like we have all the techniques that can make that fairly realistic. We have, round robin samples. There's not a lot of transition between it. There's not, 8 million articulations that interact with each other. I mean, that's the real, right? Like when articulations interact, I feel like is when sampling sometimes becomes this thicket of horror. But that I could see really working and being really, really good.
It's fluffy audio, simple jazz bass.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
cool.
That's it.
Yeah, no, I love the one that comes in swing actually, because by default it loads as a legato patch. So you play one note, the guy plucks it, and then you play another note, and it just seamlessly like goes to that next note, and it's not like polyphonic, so it does sound pretty convincing. So, but I'm sure these features are pretty common now. Like it's just all about the tone that you like, I guess, and the functionality.
And what you build around it. Like that's what I'm finding out a lot about samples. It's like, stand alone. I think as composers, what we do is we tend to listen to, like one sample, like, oh, listen to that violin. It just sounds so good, or whatever, but it's like in a mix, it doesn't matter. Like, most of that stuff gets lost. I mean, obviously if you're, because, pretty much every standard library is recorded very well at this point, right? I mean, you guys would all agree on that. It's like we're starting with good audio, from the source. That usually, to get good tracks and get good music, you have to have a good source. And I don't think that's the issue. It's just will that library work with this other library? That's where the problems start coming into, because. And then that's when you have to EQ, stuff like that. So it's how you're gonna mix it. I think the final mix is when it really matters. That's just my personal thing. Because like when you start digging into like older music or just music in general, you start listening to like the stems and the stuff. You're like, man, that sounds crap. But like in the mix, it's like you don't hear it. You know what I mean? Like you just do not hear it at all. So I think before we get hung up on like how it sounds initially, it's like wait till you get to that final mix stage, because in that final mixing, and obviously the best thing to do is send it to somebody that hasn't heard your track, because you know what I mean? Like they have fresh ears. And that's what I find me. It's like, I understand like today's budgets and stuff, like you kind of have to mix your own things, but I think there's just something to be said about having somebody else, you know, master and mix your tracks. It's I'd recommend it. You know, I just think it's you got to have somebody else that that hasn't heard it, you know, has fresh ears.
Yeah. I mean, there's like some people who complain about noise issues in libraries. We've seen a couple of instances of this on VI Control, but it's I knew that girl was coming. I knew it.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't matter at the end of the day because that most of that stuff gets covered up and it adds realism. I mean, if you listen to like, I'm just gonna say rock music. That's what I'm familiar with. That's my expertise. And it's like you start listening to these tracks from the olden days, you'll hear pick scrapes, you'll hear just little flubs here, but in the mix, you don't hear that. Especially like singers. They have microphone bleed, like because their earphones or whatever, they have one off. Like you can hear it, but in the mix you don't hear it. So, but that just adds more depth to the track. That brings more ambience to it.
I was using Hans Zimmer percussion professional the other day on something for a client that I'm pretty worried about making sure this client is really happy, and I'm playing the taiko drums and I hear someone cough.
Oh no!
In the sample, like you can hear someone coughing in the background of the sample, and there was like a second there where I'm like, I am so screwed. This is my only taiko sample. I have to get this in today. I don't have time to download a 100 gigabyte library, whatever, to replace this. Yeah. Plus, I don't want to buy another one. So I just mixed. I went in and I was gonna like try to mess with it. I go play the mix back. Can't hear it at all.
No.
I'm thinking, wow, this is like how much this library. There's this obvious like in the background. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. No one cares.
Yeah, no one cares. I think
no one's gonna notice.
I found something like that in one of the Cinesamples libraries too. Like there was like a cough or like somebody dropped something and you could hear it, but like in a mix you don't. And except when I know there was a library of the Spitfires, there's strings when you're going up from, I think it was, if I remember, a D to a D sharp, and it just the indentation or the intonation or whatever the hell, I can't speak this morning, is off, and like you can hear it. Like you can't fix that because that's just the way that it was programmed. That bugged me. So that's a different story. But yeah, when it comes to, I know we always see that. I've seen that multiple times. People complain about noise and like what?
Yeah, the 14-page VI control thread about hiss in libraries, and I'm just like, dude.
I think I've just come to a point where like, I think people expect way too much from sample libraries. It's never gonna be a real person. Okay, get that out of your head. Like I don't know why it's so hard for people to understand.
And I also feel like on VI control in particular, what I see now is this idea that like if the sample library isn't perfect out of the box, and I shouldn't have to learn it, right? Like it should just be great right away. And like if people will complain about a sample library that takes time for you to learn all the articulations and the effects and all the ways to sort of trick it into doing what you want, and I'm just like, I don't know how to help you because. If you're not going to spend time with your tools, you're never going to be good with them. Would you say that about Cubase? It's too complicated. I don't understand how to route audio. Would you say that about Logic? I'm tired. I don't want to have to learn all the sub menus and all the menus. I'm just like, you have to learn these things. You have to, and expecting a sample library to just be like playing a violin out of the box is madness. It's insane. It will never be like that because you're using an 88 key keyboard or a 72 key keyboard or whatever to try to recreate the sound of a person bowing a string. Like that's always going to be hard.
Well, more than one person. I mean, how many people are in an orchestra? I mean, is it 60?
Or an ensemble, right? Like, I mean, it's or even just like what I come back to again is those sheer mechanics. Like, what is the mechanic of making the sound? Sometimes it's pulling a string across, sometimes it's blowing air through a horn and doing all sorts of stuff with your embouchure in both the winds and the brass. Like that is a completely different mechanical process than slapping down C on a keyboard and expecting a perfect. Like you're gonna have to do stuff to make it work. And I find every time I see somebody complaining, why would I want a library that I have to learn when there's a library, and I'm like, so go use a phrase library. Go away. I don't understand. Like that's the thing I don't understand on VI control. I think it's a lot of it's just people who do this, part time, and they need to just to push stuff out really fast, and that's fine. But man, that attitude I think is really toxic and poisonous.
Well, I just think it's a lot of people that haven't come from the craft of music, or they don't play an instrument, and they don't understand the time and effort and work that goes into learning this thing that we do. I mean, I play the guitar. I mean, I'm not great or anything. I've lost my chops over the years because I don't play as much as I used to when I was 16 or 17 years old and I had all the time in the world. But you'll never be you'll say you're a master, but when you're at that point, you still think you have so much to learn. And especially for the guitar, it's probably one of the hardest instruments to learn, because along with the violin, string instruments just in general, because all the little nuances, of a string, and, the pressure, how much pressure, what do you do, and all that stuff. And you're just not going to be able to recreate that with a keyboard. I'm sorry. You just can't. And that's what we lose. And it's funny when people post, I think John Powell did this. He posted like the MIDI sample compared to the real orchestra. And it's just like, they're just, you know what I mean? Like, you can just hear it. Like the MIDI.
I'm always impressed how close those are. I would
right.
think that would be,
but
like,
there's something missing,
different.
Right? Though, like there's just something.
Yeah, no,
you know what I mean?
Recording is much better. I'm just always like, wow, that's shockingly close.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, it sounds great. It's like, damn, it's so good. But until you hear that real orchestra, you're like, but you just can't put your thing. What is it? It's just that essence. It's like the feel, the human element, and that's one thing I'm struggling too. And get back to influence and all the things that we talked about is, for me, influence-wise, most of the bands I listen to, they would start the track off and play it straight through. We're not talking about, okay, I'm doing the verse section, okay, I come back and then I write the chorus section. No, they play from bar 1 to the end. And then they go back in and, whatever, re-record little bits and, punch in and stuff like that. So it's like, I'm starting to think that approach myself. And I get hung up. I don't know if you guys get this. I mean, I guess for like orchestral and MIDI stuff, it's a little bit different than, actually playing, like a band kind of thing where you actually playing, a physical instrument into your computer. But I get hung up on beats and tempos and markers and how many bars and all this crap. And when you sit here and listen to music, you're not thinking about that stuff. Nobody cares how many bars anything is. That's a struggle I've been having with a lot. Is I think for me, the computer is great in what we can do, but I think it's just that's why music. I'm not saying all music sucks, but like I think we've lost some stuff musically with that, because we're so used to just sitting here and doing loop, or we build out 4 bars and we build it from there. You know what I mean? We get so used to that, and I think we've lost a lot of the creativity in music. I'm not saying there's not people out there being creative. I know there is. I'm just saying for me, it's that's the struggle. Like I said, coming up, we had tape recorders. I would hit record and I just play it. I didn't have a metronome. I just went off feel. I went off, if it sounds good, it is good. And most people will relate to that. But it's good to have a click. That's good to have that stuff. But if you listen to most recordings, most orchestrals, and you put a click down, they're either behind the beat or ahead the beat. Even a conductor slows it down, right? Like they speed up a passage, they'll slow it down, they'll come up. You know what I'm saying? So it's never consistent. And I was thinking about doing this in my recordings, is maybe have the verse, like, let's just, for an example, 95, and then maybe the chorus, let's do maybe 100. And then back to, you know what I mean? To give that variety in there. Because if you listen to most tracks that were recorded, that we listened to, or me and Curtis grew up with, it's not a consistent all the way through. Like when they recorded on tape, like they had, like the verse would have been 88 and, the chorus was maybe 92 and the bridge was, so that's something maybe we can start thinking about. Maybe people already do that. I don't know. I know some people do that, right? They'll in their orchestral piece, they'll put like the metronome here, and then they'll, like in Logic, you can go and then kind of make it go up, so it's kind of always changing the tempo, right? I think some people do that, don't they? Just to give that variance. So that might be something we could do. But yeah, I mean, just turn it into influences. Like for me, like I say, I'm going down a different path than you guys, but it's still music, it's still composing, but not more orchestral. I'm more, I think, going around the songwriter kind of path.
Cool.
I think this just works for me because not that I don't like doing orchestral stuff, but like you got to know when to cut your losses. It's like I just will never learn. I mean, I can do things. It's great to have those elements, but I'm never gonna be what you guys can do. I won't. That's just not my thing, and I'm cool with that. But I still love it. I still love what you guys do, and I still try to do it, But I think my time would be better spent with what I'm good at. So
yeah, you want to maximize your strengths, right? Like you
right.
To do what you shine at the most. Do you?
I'm a guitar player. I'm a musician. That's what I am. I'm not. I've always wanted to be a composer. That's always been my dream. I guess that thing that we have is like, I want to sit there in a dark room with a candle lit and write out music on paper. To me, that's attractive. I think that's very cool. Like, I wish I can do that. I probably could do that, but, I'll be 89 by the time I do it. It's just like, it's just a little late for me. It's never late, but you know what I mean? It's like, there's better time and use, than just sitting here and learning that. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's very valuable. I learned so much in the last few years studying this stuff that I actually use now. I think about these things. And so things that, like, we're talking about influences and expanding your music and, there's always something that you can learn that you can always use to what you do good. Don't think like, because I'm learning big band, like now my music has to sound like big band. No, just steal some of those ideas, maybe chord changes, melodies, or, those nuances to use. So that's definitely what, what I think was helpful. But
right. It's all about that listening.
It is.
For sure. And trial and error and seeing what works and doesn't. So, yeah.
And analysis, that's huge.
Yes. Yeah. Cool. That was fun.
Transcribing, which I need to do more.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Because when I transcribe, like I do notice a very quick difference. Because I think, at least for me, I don't know about you guys, like when I hear certain music, sometimes I overcomplicate it. I think it's harder. I think it's more difficult than it actually is. And then when you actually transcribe it, it's like, dude, that's so simple. But it sounds complicated. You know what I mean? It's crazy. I mean, there's difficult passages and, things that there is. But I'm just saying that most things that you think is difficult really isn't. But the things that you think are easy are actually more difficult. It's really weird how that works.
Yeah.
So anything else that you guys, like, influences that you've learned or, or you're taken away, from, like, I think there's so much to be learned about from, like, listening to pop music and rock music, those elements that we could put in to, like, trailer tracks and stuff. Like, I know me and Chris have talked about, like, those, like, when, like, pop songs, when it gets almost to the chorus, it drops, like, the beat drops for, like, maybe a bar or two. Man, that's so much impact that you can do in a trailer track. I mean, people do it, and then they do that, the big freaking bass swell kind of thing, which is cool. I mean, I think it's overdone. I mean, I don't even know what's going on in trailer music now. I mean, you guys know? I mean, I've kind of just said
I think we might be past the solo piano note at the beginning.
Okay, good.
I think maybe we're past it finally. I don't know.
The Force Awakens, that ding.
I feel like I haven't seen the ding quite as often. I mean, you still see it. You'll see it forever, but just like you still hear "In a World" sometimes.
You're right.
But I think maybe the fad. What is the new fad? I haven't really been paying attention to trailers when I watch trailers these days. I haven't been.
I think it's getting more sound
high piano note, or it's kind of a deep sub boom.
Yeah.
It's like
nothing's
what are
changed.
the other? You got to start really low, or you're going to start really high. So.
Let me tell you, my favorite tool for that deep sub boom, Storm Drum 2 East West. There's a patch called Ambient Largeness. It's like I don't know what they've even done.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, Chris.
Which is like the best thing. And every time I use it, people are like, "Is that a bass drum?" And I'm always like, "I don't know."
It's probably a synth with a bass drum.
Ask East West.
Yeah, ask them. I have no idea. And by the way, that sample library is from 2004 or something.
Right.
It's like
I own it. Actually own it. I own so many libraries now.
Anyway,
and I forget I loan these libraries. I don't buy anymore unless I really need a specific tool like that jazz bass thing. I've kind of just I swear to God, if you need a synth, Omnisphere, that's all you need. And even like beds, like Omnisphere is so good at that stuff. You can get those expansion packs, from the Unfinished. And then when it comes to like rock drums and stuff, I've been actually using Logic's drummer. Dude, it's really good, man. It is really good.
It's really great. It's a really great thing for people like me who, how would I describe my ability to produce percussion? I suck at it really badly. So it's really nice to have that drummer thing in Logic, because like sometimes it'll save me. You're right. It is really good. It is very good.
Logic has some good instruments.
That would be like a $300 plugin if it was like a separate plugin.
Right.
I went back to Logic, man. I mean, I love Cubase, but like just for what I do, man, and I've used it for so long, it's like I don't have to think. I just work. Cubase, it's just like I felt like I had to always think about things, because I was learning it, and I love things about Cubase, but since I'm not doing the big templatey thing, it's overkill. Like I just need Logic, man. I just need to I've even thought about going to just GarageBand, but like. I just love Logic. Yeah, no, I know. I'm just saying, but for what I need, I don't need all that shit. You know what I mean? Like, I just need to write songs. Like, that's all I care about is the music. I don't care about all that, but it's nice to have all that extra stuff.
This is one thing I feel like our group here has a little bit of a disadvantage of, is we all use Logic Pro as our primary DAW. We need some Cubase or DTP.
But I've used Cubase. I used Cubase for like 2 years, and
I don't like it. We need someone to boost Cubase in here so that we can have a serious argument about it.
No, I'm just saying, like, I came to a point, like, I'm not doing the orchestral thing, so it's overkill for what I need. Like, use what, like, I don't give a shit what DAW you use. They're all great, man. We're at a point where, like, dude, even Reaper is amazing. And I've got flack because I didn't include Studio One or one of the DAWs in my video that I said, top DAWs for composers starting out. I said, like, these are the ones that most composers are using professionally. Like if you get this DAW now and learn it, it's going to save you time in the long run.
John Powell uses Logic. That's good enough.
Yeah,
for me.
dude. Christian Henson uses Logic.
If it works for what that guy does, then it's obviously good enough to do.
There's a lot of big names that use Logic. I mean, it's just once you learn
Logic
something,
is pretty much on par with Cubase in terms of just like you can always find somebody who's in the industry. I mean, I know Mark Mothersbaugh uses Logic too.
There's a lot of people that do. I think it's like a lot of the rock dudes or whatever.
I feel like it gets more play in like the pop, like
EDM,
rock EDM world. Yeah.
Because it's cheap, and everybody has a Mac, and it's like, dude, I just go to the App Store, buy it. I got a full-fledged DAW.
Well, that's why I use it, because it's actually Mac-like. So I feel like it is a program that works with my system as opposed to, I don't know in it.
Well, I've noticed,
I talked a lot about what I like about Logic. Mostly it's the region management. I've never found something that has quite as good region management, but
I mean, what I like about it is what I've noticed is, like, when I'm in the DAW and recording, I don't look at all the other stuff because it's that minimalistic thing, which Apple does very well. And Cubase, like, to me, it's just, I'm not trying to knock it here. I love Cubase. I still have Cubase. I haven't upgraded to the newest one. I was just like, why? Because every time Logic does an update, I get it for free. I don't have to pay any, you know what I mean? So it's very, very cool for that. But like, I concentrate more on music. Like Cubase, I'm just more like into the stuff and all the cool things, and there's so many buttons. Like, that's how I feel when I work on Windows. And I'm not trying to be Mac versus PC guy. I'm just telling you, it works for me. And I'm very into that aesthetic thing, like I have to have something that looks good, and Logic does. I mean, it's gotten a lot better. I mean, remember Logic 9 days? I mean, Curtis remembers. So, when they did Logic 10, that was a huge improvement. So much better. So it feels so modern.
After a while, I think it is now. When Logic 10 first came out, I switched to it immediately, and it was definitely, I would actually go back to Logic 9 to work on serious stuff, because when it first came out, it drove me insane. But I think it's good now. Yeah, it's really good now. And actually, I feel like they've been updating it recently. Like, I don't really know when it updates, because it just updates like in the background. I don't even notice, which is really actually terrifying now that I realize that I have that set up that way, because usually I don't do any updates when I'm working on serious, client work and stuff. So I should probably turn that off. But anyway, recently I've been noticing like the interface changing very subtly in certain ways, and I feel like they're updating it. And the updates have all been excellent. I don't know if you all have noticed that, Chris. I know you work in Logic a lot. Have you noticed any changes recently?
I kind of have, like the way certain things look.
I feel like the piano roll, like I feel like they used to never show you multiple lanes. Now they show you multiple lanes, kind of nicely ghosted in the background. There was something else recently I opened up. I was like, why? That looks way different. Oh, they added chroma verb. Has it, like, when did they?
Oh, yeah. That was a while ago.
When did they add that? I've never noticed it before because I always use Space Designer if I'm using Logic's reverb. But anyway,
Yeah, I think they did that a while. That big update they had, I think, a year or two ago.
I'm like 8 years behind the curve. Cool.
Yeah, I mean,
cool. Awesome.
That's the thing about
Shows you
Logic,
how much
though.
I actually notice things.
There's so much like in there, man, that people don't realize, like samples and loops and that you can use. And it's like I've been trying to like find loops that like, hey, maybe this can spark an idea, and they're free to use. They have like like loops of like maybe like African instruments or drums or something like just to get creative, and that's there for our to use. And they have all those synths now. I mean, it's insane like how much stuff you get in Logic for the price. What is it, $299? I think it's $299 or $199 maybe. I bought it, man, back when it was like $500. Like I think it was $500, $600, and I bought it in a box in Logic 9, which I still have.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, here we are talking about DAWs again, but like it's a tool, and I think at the end of the day, like this is my biggest frustration with music and what's going on now and with the computer and composing, and my gripes is just like I think we get hung up too much on samples, DAWs, and all this crap. It's like, why don't you put that energy into learning music, how to make a song, how to compose, how to write a melody. Put that energy to that so we can all have great music to listen to. I think I'm coming that old grumpy guy. I mean, because it's just like we just waste so much time arguing. And case in point, just go to VI Control. There you go. And people arguing over stupid things, man. It's like it's a sample library. You're not paying $500 for an orchestra. You know what I mean? Like you're not getting an orchestra where you can say, "Hey guys, play this." You know what I mean? It's like it's pre-recorded. You're playing pre-recorded audio files.
Right.
That's it. I mean, that's what we're doing. I mean, I need to get into this game and make a burps and farts and library or something, or I'm just kidding. I thought about
that would
doing
be
like
awesome. You could use those as the put it into like make an Omnisphere library, but like make these beautiful pads out of it, because you could like have like some like a giant belch and then put it in an Omnisphere and shape it down into some like gorgeous pad, like you.
Yeah.
I think
another thing I realized,
taking the lead on that.
I don't know if you guys know this too. If you're looking for like audio files, loops, and like kind of like atmospheric things, or just noises, not noises, but like anything, check out YouTube's media, man. I don't think a lot of people know this. Like they have loops and stuff in there too that you can use to put in your videos. I found some stuff that I was trying to use for ambient music, like wind and like children playing in the park, just for like ambient kind of thing, and atmospheric stuff. Yeah, check out if all you have to have is a YouTube account, but if you're looking for loops or stuff like that, they have stuff in there. I don't think a lot of people know about that. I was actually going to do a video on that.
Nice.
So our second topic of the week, we wanted to talk about phrase libraries. So we're talking kind of about, sometimes you'll hear this called one-shots. So this is any library where the individual sample is not like a per note / articulation sort of style where you can, say, program your own chord or melodic line or whatever, right? Like this is where there is something that has been or ostinato pattern, right? Like, so a lot of these are ostinato driven. We sort of wanted to talk about, what are our thoughts on these? And this is kind of a controversial topic. A lot of people think this is not composing. There are a lot of people who only compose this way, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess I'll start and just kind of talk about my thoughts on this. I think phrase libraries are really useful in very specific niches. One of the things that I think that they are really good for, obviously, is percussion. A drum loop is essentially a phrase library, right? It's a one shot, right? Like, this is a pre-recorded section of music. You're not able to go in and move the notes around. And I think that in a drum loop context, phrase libraries, that is probably their best place where they can live, because a drum loop, a drummer or a series of drummers getting together and playing taiko drums or drum kits or whatever are always going to produce something that's probably better than you can make with MIDI. Like, that's a really great place for them. Another place where I use them and I think they're really useful are on any instrument where programming with a keyboard is so disconnected from the mechanics of the original instrument that it is impossible to really reproduce it. And one of the places I found that this is true is vocals, because the mechanics of producing sound with a human voice is so utterly different than pressing a key on a keyboard that it is impossible to get quite the same fidelity no matter how well you program. And you'll hear this in choral libraries a lot. This is why even some of the best choral libraries today, they work in the place where they're strong, but then it is very easy to get into sounding as bad as like 90s MIDI with vocal stuff. So I think that's another place where they can be. My belief is that using these is fine as long as you do it intentionally and fairly, with a thought of, I'm using it here for this specific purpose because in this specific place, having a pre-recorded one shot is going to be better than anything that I can produce. So again, this goes back to choosing, what instruments are doing it, how removed are they from the MIDI programming process, et cetera. Another great place for one shots is specialized string effects. String runs up and down, woodwind runs up and down, things like that. Like, you're just never going to be able to program a string run the way strings, right. I mean, even with Hollywood Strings has string run patches, and getting them to be even not noticeably MIDI is very difficult, even those. So that's where I would say I use them. I try to avoid them. I know that there's companies who base their entire stuff on I know isn't it Sonic Connect who does all
that's Sonic Kinetic.
Sonic Connect, sorry. And they do all these loopy sort of ostinato stuff is what I've seen. Depending on how you're using it, I can see it being well. I would hesitate to use that on an entire track. I think maybe that's a little dangerous. I don't know. That
excessive.
That seems like music producing. That seems like music editing to me, not so much composing, but that's just my opinion. They can certainly be extremely effective and extremely useful. My personal favorites in here are 8Dio has a drum series called Hybrid Rhythms that has a lot of really cool hybrid drum loops that I really, really like. Heaviosity has the Vocalese packs that are like gravity based that are really, really good. And then again, any orchestral library is always going to come with some one shots like string runs and stuff like that. So that's generally where I sort of keep my loop libraries and phrase libraries there. What do you do, Chris?
Yeah, no, that's an absolutely great point. And I think for myself, I use them in one of two places, which you've both mentioned. Number one, if I am unable to replicate it as successfully in my own, like with my own libraries. And number two, if maybe I'm stuck for an idea, maybe I want to use that for some inspiration, and that can certainly help. But a good example like Hollywood Winds from Cinesamples, that's a completely phrase-based, they have playable patches as well, but they're kind of known for their scale runs and their textured effects and all that stuff. And it sounds really, really good because that's the whole intention of it is to sprinkle it into your tracks to give it that realistic touch. And I think libraries like that are fantastic when you know exactly what you want. You want, for example, a D major woodwind run, like going up 2 octaves and coming back. You're probably not going to be able to get that from, for example, like a solo or individually recorded library where you have to put them all together and then add the room on top. It's just not going to work as well. So in that case, definitely use that. But where I found myself on this last project I've been doing, using a phrase library is Sonic Kinetics Noir, actually. And it's their only jazz-based library so far. But it's really cool because they have both sections where they recorded strings, brass, and woodwinds for this jazzy stuff. It's kind of like a bed. I actually don't use those as much because I don't really compose in that style yet, but I've been using their solo stuff more from Noir, which is basically a bunch of individually recorded instruments playing a ton of different phrases. And so I found that like just layering in a euphonium playing a 5-second kind of lick thing adds a touch of realism to it, which sounds really good. And I'll kind of, just sprinkle in whatever I feel just adds to the track and just makes it a little bit more authentic. And some of those instruments haven't really been sampled yet in the industry, like multi-sampled note by note. So having these kind of pre-recorded phrases are really, really nice. And there's enough options out there to not have something instantly recognizable if you're using a specialized library like this. Like for some libraries, obviously those phrases have been terribly overused and you might want to stay away from those. But for more niche ones like Noir and maybe some of the Sonokinetic ones, some composers compose primarily starting from there as a starting point, and then they'll add in their own stuff on top. But it like Curtis said, it's really down to the intention, and if you're using it to spark an idea, perfect, right? And also if you're doing something to put in a touch of authenticity that you can't replicate with your own libraries, that's a perfectly valid reason to do it as well. So, Todd, what are your kind of thoughts on this?
Yeah, mine was pretty similar to your guys's. I'll use them to spark an idea, obviously, because sometimes you'll get, like an ostinato thing, or maybe just the way the phrase is being played, or the loop, or whatever you want to call it, will get you an idea. And I think for me, I think the way you should use them is, to build around them. Kind of what you said, Chris, is it's like use it as a starting point, but yet let's build on top of it, like a layer, obviously like Hollywood woodwinds that you're talking about. Yeah. If you don't know how to orchestrate like a whole section like that, you could build that in there and then layer on, your woodwind libraries just to give it that natural feel. As far as like libraries that I've used that are that obviously the ones that Curtis mentioned, Vocalese, that's really good. All the things from the Gravity packs, like Natural Forces, Scoring Guitars, I have all those, and I think they're really well, and I'll use them as a bed, but I'll build on top of them. So it's not predominantly my track is focused on that one thing. I do own, I think, one Sonokinetic. It's the brass thing, and that, for me, it works because I think it works for people like me that don't know how to orchestrate very well or don't understand it. So it kind of saves you the times like, hey, that's the sound I'm looking for, so I'm going to throw that in there. But I try to layer it and try to build on it, not just rely on, that phrase. Because as we know, and a lot of people do, is they'll just hit one button and that's their track. And obviously Vocalese, isn't there some big AAA games soundtracks that like it's
yeah,
Vocalese? It's like, they didn't do anything to that patch.
And things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's like if you're going to use a phrase library, try to alter it. Make it.
That's
your
really good
own.
advice right there. Altering it. I mean, there's lots of ways to be creative with altering these phrase libraries. One of my personal favorites, Output puts out a plugin. It's not an instrument. It's a plugin. It's called Movement, and it adds rhythm and other changes to basically to the audio that's coming through it. It's very hard to describe, actually. I don't know of any other plugin that quite does the same thing, because it's doing it's chopping it up, it's adding rhythm, it's adding all these effects, phasing, phrase. What am I searching for? Anyway, all these effects, chorus, flanger, all that stuff, sort of dynamically. It's really, really cool. And that can totally
what's the name of it?
It's by Output.
Movement,
that is a really good way to take a one shot and turn it into something that no one's ever heard before, because it will completely transform the sound into something completely unrecognizable. You could do the same with it adds delays, again, all the stuff it does you could replicate with a bunch of delay, chorus, flanger, blah 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 plugins. It's just nice that it kind of has that all in one interface, and does it's really, really cool. I use it all the time, and I like to use it on specifically Vocalese because I can make Vocalese unrecognizably different than what it was so that you don't recognize it. Having said that, I have put straight up Vocalese phrases just directly in things, and I've had clients who just want that. They want that specific little loop there, and so I just do it. I do it for them. So it just depends on the needs of your project. But you always be creative about that. I mean, you could reverse these things. So you could take one of these and reverse it backwards. I mean, it was like 3 episodes ago I was talking about Output Arcade. That's effectively a phrase library because it's basically just loops. But it allows you to manipulate them in a way where they become unrecognizable. I would say, again, Output is a great company for that specific idea of taking sound and manipulating it into something new.
Yeah, and Heaviosity as well. They
yes.
Just they're known for their sound design, and they've done some really cool loop stuff. So I own not Damage, but the Ensemble drums, and they have some really cool loops in there.
Ensemble
really
drums is so
stuff.
good.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. And then when you're gonna fall victim to like Damage, it's been way overused. But it's how can you can still use it, but how can you make it so it's unique to you and it doesn't sound like everybody else? Because like I'm telling you, like most composers, a lot of people out there, they're just using it straight, which is great. I mean, it works. If it sounds good, it is good. But you still want to put your spin on it, and like that output movement, man. That sounds really cool. And I know in Logic. Like Space Designer, you can like get really creative with it, and like you can make it where like you get that reverb, but it like gives you movement and like kind of gives you a different feel, and maybe it'll drop like a fourth or an octave, like a pitch, which I can do that with the reverbs I use on my guitar. That's kind of an ambient trick. A lot of people in the ambient world use that kind of thing, like use reverbs as effects to create sound beds and stuff. So that's a way of getting away from just simply, hey, I'm holding down C. There we go. We're done. You can do that. I mean, but I think the beauty of what those are is that's your initial idea. Now, where can you take that idea? Where can you build on it and, make it cool? Where at the end of the day, when you listen to it, you don't even hear that loop. You know what I mean? It's like it's just so part of the track, and you're like, "Oh yeah, I'm using that loop there." And like, dude, I wouldn't.
Yeah,
even
you've
know
got
that
value add there. Like you added something valuable to that when in that context, right? Like always be asking yourself, what is my value add? If you can be replaced by a very small script, I would suggest that perhaps you should at least be a very complicated script, and then maybe script it and sell it that instead of. I don't know, I like always be asking, what is my value add, and what am I doing here that no one else can do, or not even that no one else can do, that just like a phrase library can't do, because that's really hard.
Yeah.
I mean, all of us work, at least at our level, without being able to go out and record the strings doing the exact thing that we want, or the whatever. Like we are not hiring large groups of players to play on our stuff, and that's always hard because you're always going to be pushing up against. I've heard this before. I mean. Every time I can tell when people use Hollywood strings in stuff. Like I know it. I know it so well that I just like that is a Hollywood string cello. I know exactly which cello patch that is. Just because I've been using it for 100 years, right? So I have them all. I've heard them all a million times, probably literally thousands of times, and that's hard because like now I know that, and so I'm always trying to like now that's why these days I bought other string libraries, not because I thought they were better, but just to mix them in to get a sound that I'd not heard before, because I was so tired of hearing vanilla. And that's just like that's not a phrase library, that's a regular sample library, and I was getting tired of it. So it's you always got to be kind of on that, like pushing yourself to like, what is my value add, what am I doing here that no one else is doing, etc., even to that level. And so I think with looper libraries, it's just that times a million, right? Like because it's so easy for it to become that thing I've heard a million times. So
Right. I'm going to get philosophical here for a second. Technically, aren't all libraries phrase libraries because you're using audio samples that were recorded?
No.
I'm just being a douche.
I mean,
but
theoretically, you could take, right, like cello lines and audio edit them down into samples. I mean, that's why stem uses in orchestral recordings are so tightly controlled by agreement, because theoretically you can just take your cello stem from when you recorded it and turn it into a cello library. I mean, there's nothing stopping you.
Right.
So it's sort of.
I know. I'm just being.
I mean, if you want to go become a pure
douchey.
composer, do what Todd said and go to a little room with a pen and paper and a piano and just that. Then you're really not using them, but.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, I think another thing that you could do with these phrase libraries, if you can, get creative and find real instruments, even if it's just a tambourine or a shaker or just something, man, and add that to your track, because you'll be so surprised how much a real live instrument will just up the ante in your tracks, because everything's digital, and just that one little thing could change the way it feels. And I think I noticed a lot of composers doing that. They're starting to add that stuff. But obviously, if you're at that level, you're getting your stuff recorded by a symphony or an orchestra. So that's not really their concern. They're just trying to get the mock-up. But for us people, that don't have that option, you just gotta get creative. Like if you can use a real drum, just to add some flavor there and sample it or whatever, and use it as a loop, or take loops, like I was saying, out of Logic that are real instruments, because they record it really well. They're really good, and add that into your track as well. It's just it's just getting creative and trying to separate yourself from everybody else. And like I said, you gotta, when you're thinking about this, what you're doing, I don't like to put it this way, but this is the truth, is you're making a product. And if you want to get hired, like, why does people hire Hans Zimmer, John Williams, all these people? Is because they want that product, what they do. I mean, obviously you're going to get in a situation like, I want what Hans Zimmer does. That's what they think. They want that. But like, if they came to you, there's something about that you do that they want. And, so it's a fine line. I don't know how to put that into words, but you got to do you. And it's kind of ties back into our main discussion, influences. It's great to be, influenced by people and using those and stealing those ideas and putting them in your own work. But at the end of the day, let's concentrate on what you do. And don't be ashamed of that. I know there's times that I'm ashamed of it, but everybody's influenced by somebody, and it comes out in your music no matter any way you look at it. It's going to come out somehow, but it's kind of like, it's getting recycled, but it's going to come, like, you can tell where they're pulling their influence, but it should come out to what you do. Because like, I'm not going to be able to play like Keith Richards or David Gilmour. I can emulate them, but it's not going to be them. It just won't, because I don't think like them. I don't use their note choices. I don't bend like them. I mean, I can sit there and study it all day and get very close, but the thing I've learned is, like, about any music, it doesn't matter, rock, classical, it's like you can emulate anybody. Like, anybody can copy anybody, right? You can sound like Metallica, you can sound like the Beatles, you can sound like John Williams, but when you go to write your own thing, you're not thinking like John Williams. Like, you can't steal his mind and the way he thinks about note choices. You can learn them and like what he kind of does all the time, right? Like, he probably falls on similar patterns, things, but you're just not going to do it. I don't know where I'm going with this, but so stop worrying about that. Just do you.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. I think it's great.
Because you're going to go farther. I mean, we all influence, we all try to replicate what we love, but find a way to put your spin on it, and then I think you'll be more successful that way in the long run.
For sure.
Like you, Chris, like I can tell you're when I first heard your first track when we did like a year ago, you were on how we first met, the track reviews, and I was like, I could tell like right away, I was like, dude, this dude's influenced by Mario. I can get it. But there was something just, I'm just saying, but there was something else. Like, I can tell you're doing you, and that's what attracted me. I was like, but it's like Mario, it's like that thing, but it's different. And like all the other tracks I've heard that you do, like, you're finding your voice, and you're expanding your palette, with the jazz stuff. And I mean, you're a piano player, so I'm sure you played this stuff before. You're just bringing it into your orchestral thing, but it's still you. I could still hear Chris in your tracks. And same with Curtis. Like, I've been following Curtis for years, and like before I even met him, before I even met Curtis, and when I interviewed him for my composing, composer talk series on YouTube, like, I was following Curtis for years because like he would do live streams and stuff. But like, and I've seen Curtis's music change, but it's still Curtis. I can hear, like, when I hear Curtis's music, I'm like, that's Curtis. I can just tell, like the way he does strings and your note choices. I can hear it, So even if you're doing something, atmospheric or different, I can just hear it. So I think, anyway, that's my 2 cents. Anything else? I think we covered phrase libraries. I mean, it's not. I don't think they're bad. I mean, let's just say that we're not saying they're bad. We're just saying it's a tool.
No,
Yeah.
I certainly think that the demonization of them as like a concept, I think is a mistake. But at the same time, it's like everything else. It's great and it's in the correct amount. There is a correct amount of it to use,
right.
and there is too much, and there's and so you just got to be careful with it and just avoid the pitfalls of losing your, like you said, losing your voice. So, picks of the week.
Ooh.
Yeah. I got one right off the bat. I was fortunate. I got it on sale. I don't think it is anymore. Blackhole Reverb. Who's that by? It's escaping me right now. Eventide. Yeah. Eventide. Duh, I should have knew that. Yeah, so Eventide had a sale on Blackhole Reverb, and I've been wanting this for years because they actually make a physical guitar pedal. That's how I think it started. It was a guitar pedal, and I wanted to buy it. But I have the Strymon Big Sky, which is pretty similar, but the obviously the Eventide one does different things, has different sounds, different, kind of software running it. So I was like, well, I got the Big Sky, so I don't really need, another physical reverb. And when I found out they had the plug-in version, I don't know, how it compares to the actual physical reverb pedal, guitar pedal, but yeah, I think it was like it was under $100. I think it's normally like $200. I picked that thing up. I've been experimenting with it a little bit, but I'm so excited to dive into it. So that's gonna be my pick of the week. I mean, it was a steal. I think I shared it in the Discord. I was like, if you don't buy this now, And I want to mention another reverb, Valhalla. If you're looking for a reverb that's really cheap and you just can't afford any of the big ones, check out Valhalla. It's amazing.
And it's super good for an algorithmic one, right? Like it sounds very convincing. So.
Oh, it's really good. It's really good.
I'll go next. My choice is the Monster Low Winds from Cinesamples. I did a video on it, but it's very meaty. It has a bunch of like contrabassoons and bass clarinets and all that good stuff. They all the players were seated in a semicircle on the Sony stage, and from the first like staccato note that you play, it's beautiful, and it just has so much depth and weight to it that like any cinematic or thriller or epic score you might have, if you want a touch of authenticity, definitely consider that one. It's quite small. I think I only needed like 4 gigabytes of space to install it because the library is only 1 point something in size, and the patch list is very concise, but what it does come with it really packs a punch. So I really like that one.
Nice. Is that similar to like their?
It is,
yeah,
but it's just a separate library. Okay, cool. So they separately recorded this. Cool.
Yeah, I saw them launch it. I just haven't taken a look at it yet. I'm trying to stay away from sample library. I don't need any more. I have too many. But yeah, no, it looked cool.
Awesome. That sounds really cool. That and the sound of it that I heard from the thing was just like,
like boom. And then he started playing Rite of Spring with it. I'm like, dude, that's great. Yeah. That's good.
Cool. Actually, whenever I was trying out woodwind patches back in the day, I used to always grab the bassoon and see how it handled that just to see how does the bassoon. But anyway, all right. So for my pick of the week, so this product has been around for a billion years. I think I started seeing my first things that recommending I use it back before I even owned any of the Hollywood stuff. So it's very difficult to describe what it is. The name of it is either Ski Switcher or Arts ID. Skiswitcher.com is their well, I don't understand because sometimes he refers to his Arts ID in his documentation. It's very weird. The guy has like a love of coming up with new words for things and then using those like everyone knows what they are. So it's a little bit hard to understand. And it's actually from a conceptual point of view, it's actually really hard to kind of get your head around what this does. It's for Logic, so you cannot use it with any other DAW. So, if you're with Cubase, you'll have to go back to your articulation maps or whatever. But what this does is, so all of us have had that experience of either setting up a template or working on a track, and you need your violin to have multiple articulations, and maybe the articulation in library X is better than library Y, and maybe you need to have say a legato patch, but you also need the long patches so that you can have multiple notes playing it, in polyphony. And what you end up getting a lot of the time, especially in Logic, is 7,800 million tracks, which actually could be a problem because Logic does actually have a VST limit. Like you can only have so many individual VSTs in a Logic project. I can't remember what the number is. I have never hit it, but I know people who have. And what Ski Switcher does is it basically makes that go away. So I've been setting up a template with Ski Switcher this week, and there is a track for my flutes, there is a track for my piccolos, my clarinets, my oboes, my violin ones, my violin twos, and I have access to all of the articulations for all of those instruments on all the tracks. Because what it does is it basically allows you, it's sort of, I know I talk a lot about how I hate key switching, and I do, and it's basically is like key switching not just on steroids, but like key switching that has been genetically engineered, sent into the Captain America, machine, and then given steroids. Because what it does is it basically allows you to have one track with all of your possible articulations or patch changes within that one single track. But not only is it like that, but the data for each one is encoded in each note. So when you go to like look at the track, if you like say, go to the piano roll and you select a whole staccato section, you know how like Logic plays it back, right? When you select it in the piano roll, it plays back with the articulation that you suggested or that you programmed it in as.
Oh, nice.
Right. So you don't have to worry about, that thing with like key switch patches where, the key switch is way back on measure 8 and, for some reason it's on the wrong articulation. No, it's encoded in the actual MIDI event itself. So like if you select a whole thing where you've got staccato, pizzicato, legato, and long in that section, as you select it, they play back with the correct articulation. It's spooky. It's weird. It's freaky how good it is. Basically what it's doing is it's Logic has some sort of articulation scripting in it somewhere, and it's basically allows you to like assign to each note. It does it with, I think, MIDI channels, but because it's in each note, you never have to worry about it playing back wrong. You can play it back from any place. It will always play back correctly. You can do it with multiple patches from different like vendors. Like let's say if you wanted to use the Hollywood strings legato, but you wanted to use Century strings staccato, you can do that with this patch. And then it just transparently switches. It's as close as I've ever seen to getting to that dream of just like put a dot over the note and you get your articulate. You get the correct articulation, or writing in flautando and getting the flautando bowing. It is magical. It is maddeningly complex. It is like I said, I had to read the manual probably 5 or 6 times before I really understood how it worked and how it's hard. But I've now got a template that it looks just like an orchestral score. It's not 6,000 things. It's just these are my violin ones, and it's all the articulations that I could.
Cool. Sounds similar to expression maps a little bit, but I think it's a little more robust.
It seems like it is more robust than articulation maps. I'm not super up on articulation maps because I've like used Cubase like twice, but and it's very complicated, and you can use it in different ways. And like I guess there are people who have like separate MIDI controllers that just control this particular thing because it's a lot easier to do it. I have it where I just am using my keyboard my 88 key that I normally use, but it's really cool. But like I said, the downside of it is that the learning curve is not a curve. It's a straight 90 degrees straight up in the air line. I mean, it was hard to understand. So I would highly recommend it if you use Logic. It's amazing the way it just stops that track creep. And this is what I'm really looking forward to. When it comes time to export stems for something, I'm just going to be able to say file, bounce all tracks as audio instead of having to go in and, my current template, I have like, one Vienna instance, and then there's like a bunch of MIDI channels. So I have to go like, do those individually. With this, I will never have to do that again if I can get a template working. And I've got an orchestral template mostly working with it. So it's been pretty cool. It's a pretty cool program, and it's obviously extraordinarily powerful in terms of just what it can do, because it's very it's very complex. So, and apparently his tech support is really good. I haven't had a chance to actually use it, but anyway, that is he's got some really cool things. He shows you the score editor, like of what a key switcher would look like, and then with key switches, right? And of course, the key switches is just an atrocity. It looks like, you've got all these low notes and high notes and blah blah blah, and then it reduces it down to just the actual information that you want to see.
Cool, awesome,
Cool.
So if you're up for completely redoing all your templates and spending weeks learning this, it's a cool product. So
Nice. I just wanted to mention the Valhalla. They have Valhalla Vintage Verb, Valhalla Room, and Valhalla Shimmer. So they have like different types of reverbs, and they're like $50.
I picked up all the Valhalla
well
reverbs this
worth the
week
money.
because they had a sale, I think.
Oh, nice.
I saw it on VI Control, and I was like, I don't have it. I'm always looking for good reverbs.
Oh, it's really good. I use it all the time. Definitely recommend if you're on a budget and like you don't, like I said, you don't have enough to spend, $300 on something. Definitely check out the Valhalla. They're highly recommended. I hear a lot of people.
Yeah, I've seen them.
Recommend
told
them.
that it's really, really good. So
Yeah, awesome.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode.
Guess we'll see everybody next month on the Composing Made Simple.
Yep. Cool. All right.
Yay.
We'll do it. Dun, 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 dun.
You should just leave that in, Todd. That should be our outro.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah,
we'll do it in harmony. Da, da.
Oh my goodness.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Composing Made Simple. Thanks again for tuning in and listening to us. As always, you can head on over to composingmadesimple.com and you'll find the information about me, Chris, and Curtis. Also, you'll find the information on how to join our Discord server. We really appreciate it if you come on over there and hang out with us. As always, if you're listening to this on iTunes, please leave us a review. And as always, thanks again, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.